So we've hinted at the fact that Revit's a workflow program. All right, so we have our levels created. We brought in our CAD backgrounds and we created our grids. And the reason why we created grids after levels is because Revit needed to know how far up to extend those grids, right? Especially if you didn't use a scope box, it would automatically take them to level 3. So using a scope box kind of saves you there, but creating levels before grids is just a good practice, good habits to get into. So now we get into the modeling side of things and what's a good workflow. Well, I've been harping on the fact that us as Revit users, we're really just translators, right? We're translating the real world to the virtual world. And if the goal is to get an accurate foundation modeled here, we don't need to necessarily model foundations first, right? So we think about what Revit likes to go next. From here on out, Revit wants vertical elements. It wants walls and columns, okay? Because as you get used to using Revit and you understand what it wants to be linked to, you understand that floors link to walls and foundations link to columns. So let's play on that and let's start modeling. So now that we are done with our 3D view, as far as the visibility of our scope box, we can start cleaning it up a little bit. So let's hide some things in our 3D view. So make sure you are active in your 3D view and let's type in VG. And under our analytical model categories, we're not going to need any of that. Under imported categories, we're not going to need any of that. And you can just hit apply just to see it clean up. And we don't need scope boxes for now. Let's make this column a little wider. We don't need scope boxes for now. So we can go ahead and just leave it like that. So for now, because we're just getting started with our walls, we're going to model them in plan view and we're just going to keep note of them, you know, use our 3D view as a way to just see the progress of our model. So in plan view in level 1, go ahead and let's hide the floor plan. It's too much going on. VG, imported categories. Now look for floor plan and uncheck that box. And hit OK. Now let's zoom in here. And if you do not like these thin and thick lines, at the top of your Revit session, there's this little thin lines button. The shortcut is also TL. Okay, and now all we got are thin lines there. Okay, so now let's start modeling some walls. Let's go to our structure tab, hover over wall drop down and hit wall structural, or you can use the shortcut WA. And you can see in my type selector, the naming of walls. When you name your walls, they should also have a logic. Remember, Revit is an awesome program. Sometimes it's too smart for its own good. However, sometimes it needs to be taught. And in naming my walls this way, I am communicating to a future user where that wall should be used, how it's going to be built, what thickness it is. I'm not just saying 12-inch concrete, right? So when you're creating your walls, right, these are some of the defaults, but when you're creating your walls, try to get specific with where they should be used, okay? Because not only will that help you out later when it comes to scheduling, creating schedules and pulling quantities, but it's also a training to less experienced staff. Hey, have you updated your walls yet? Oh, well, what are they supposed to be on the exterior? Well, how is it supposed to be built? And then that's an opportunity for training, right? So in the template you're using, these are just some walls that I've created. So let's go ahead and let's go to plan view and let's use the pick lines tool. I'm a fan of pick lines. And before we get trigger happy, we want to look at our options bar, okay? So look at the natural position of our mouse. We click walls, we go to pick lines, and our mouse hovers over the options bar before we go to the model space. So on our options bar, let's look at some of these settings. We definitely want to go up in space. Revit tells you that it needs to reset some properties. Sure thing, Revit. And now on the unconnected height, we want to go to level 2. And the location line, we're going to explain what finish face exterior means. Let me zoom out a little bit. Up here on my drawing options, if I select just draw lines, I have my location line as finish face exterior. That location line makes sense if you model in a specific order. If I go clockwise, that finish face exterior makes sense. I made that left click first, and you can see that my wall is going to the correct side if I want that hidden line to represent the exterior. And as I go down, which is clockwise, you can see that the location line is on the finish face exterior. This is all part of keeping your site organized, keeping your model organized. This all helps when later down the progress of your project, some of these walls change thicknesses and you need to update. You need to do a mass update. It'll be nice if all of these location lines are set correctly. So take the extra 2 seconds and set your location line correctly. So let's go ahead and let me just delete those. I'll go ahead and place my wall again, WA. Use my pick lines. And because I'm picking lines, Revit gives me a hidden line representing where I want the wall to go to. So I'm gonna go ahead and hover over this grid here. Oh, click the wrong side. This grid here, like that. And I'm coming down into the building. But now you can see it's too thick. So if I place a dimension here, DI, and I go from my grid to that 2D line there, 7 7/8, it's concrete, they most likely mean 8 inches. So let's go ahead and grab this wall and let's edit type. And it looks like shotcrete exterior 12 inches is the only type for shotcrete exterior. So let's duplicate and let's just create an 8-inch thickness and update the structure to 8-inch. And hit OK. And you can see on plan view, because we set our location line correct, that it updated its thickness based on where that location line was. So I'm going to go ahead and place some more of these walls. And as we get to the elevator pit, we're going to have a slightly different workflow, okay? So let me just use some trims here. So I'm going to trim this concrete wall back to this grid. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to modify this wall. So let's go to the Modify tab. Let's look for the Trim Single option. Shortcut is TS. So I select my location first, my destination first, and the part I want to keep, okay? Now I get to select this wall, create similar. You can right click or on your keyboard type in CS. And you can just start there and just go all the way down like this and go ahead and turn the corner. All right. So this wall is just continuous, right? In our 3D view, you can see what it's doing there. So now we're going to get into little tips and tricks to create that, the elevator pit, okay? So we have our walls created, but walls go first before floors go. So I'm not going to automatically create the elevator pit now. I need to create the elevator pit walls that go beneath these walls. So first, let's split this long 8-inch wall, right? So let's, on our modify tab in the modify panel, let's look for that button right there, split element. And let's just split it out here somewhere, right about there. And now let's trim that corner of that elevator together. TR and select both walls that you want to keep. Now 3 of these walls are actually 12 inches. You can see that. It's only the walls at where the elevator doors are that is 8. So let's go ahead and select, let's do a hover, tab, click. And now on your keyboard, if you press Control, you can see my cursor changes. It's a little plus mark there. If you press Shift, it's a minus. So let me just hit minus. I don't need those 3. And now you can update your walls. So I don't have anything that says, shotcrete interior. So let's go ahead and duplicate this wall. First, I'm going to change it to the 12. And now I'm going to duplicate and change this to interior. Or, elevator. Okay. And now same thing with this 8-inch wall. I will duplicate this wall. And I'm going to see if I got any interiors. I do not. Let's duplicate interior. And of course, it's best to have all of this created in your template, right? So you don't have to create these every time you create a new project. All right, so we just placed those walls around our elevator. And you can see that we placed them based on where the location line was, right? So let's go ahead and change these location lines. Let's select this one wall, and over on the properties under location line, let me hit finish face interior. And let's just see if something happens. My wall didn't physically move, but it just changed where the location line is. So if my wall does change size, it'll change sizes based on the location line. So let's grab all of these walls, these 4 walls. Let's hover, tab, click. And under the location line, let's choose finish face interior. They shouldn't have moved. Perfect. Now this is where we get into mini workflows, okay? Let's click once in our 3D view. Click once in 3D, all right? We should be here. And we have those 4 walls highlighted, okay? When they are highlighted, on your keyboard, press Control-C. That's good old Windows for copy. That is the same thing as going over here under the Modify Walls, under our clipboard, and hitting copy. Same thing, okay? We are copying it to the clipboard. Now go ahead and hit escape. Remember, we have copies of these walls, okay? Now let's grab these 4 walls. Let's change them. Let's update them to be the elevator pit walls now. So now let's, on the base offset, let's say -5. Let it update. On the top constraint, let's just say level 1. And then on the wall type, here on our type selector, you can choose a wall, shotcrete interior 12. You can see that the 8-inch portion updated, and then we can create a new type. Let's see if we got elevator pit in here. We do not. And let's just create elevator pit. You can do cast in place, elevator. And get rid of that 2 there. All right. So our elevator pit walls are there. But remember, we made the copies of the originals. So now on our Modify tab, we got our Paste drop-down menu there that's highlighted. And now click on Aligned to Same Place. Boom, and we got the original the original version that was there, okay? So now in 3D, please fight, you know, trying to go to 2D. Let's try to make these changes in 3D. I want to extend this wall to the face of these concrete elevator walls. So let's just grab one of these walls, one of the shorter ones, and on your keyboard press shift, and on your mouse press the scroll button down, and let's just orbit a little bit. And now let's use the trim single command. Modify, trim single. So from here on out, I'm going to start using more keyboards. So TS. I'm going to hover over my destination first. You can see my face is highlighted. And I'm going to select what I want to modify. There you go. And for some of you, if I hit TS, you can see how when I hover over my cursor, the entire surface highlights. You can change that. If you go to your Modify tab, under that Select dropdown, you can say Select Elements by Face. If it's not checked, you have to hover over the corner of it for Revit to understand what you want to do. So I got used to Elements by Face. It's much quicker for me, so that's what I'm using. So now take your time and let's go ahead and place concrete walls where you see them, and then we'll talk a little bit about sequencing.